The shrill ring of the phone cut through the darkness like a blade. 3 a.m. on a quiet Thursday morning, and the world outside was still, but inside Jason's small apartment, time seemed to stop. His eyes snapped open, heart hammering, a cold sweat running down his back. The display on the phone blinked an unknown number, but he instinctively answered. And then he heard it, the words that would change everything. "She's in surgery. You're her last hope." The voice on the other end was calm but urgent, clinical yet desperate. Jason felt the floor drop out from under him, his stomach twisting, his chest tightening as memories flooded back like a relentless tide. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of love, pause for a moment and like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Because some stories remind us why hope is never truly lost. 3 years had passed since the divorce that shattered Jason's life. 3 years since he had moved out of the home he once shared with Emily, the mother of his only daughter, Lily. Those 3 years had been hard, quiet, lonely, filled with routine and guilt. Being a single dad was not just a role, it was survival. He juggled 2 jobs, scraped together every dime to keep a roof over their heads, and yet somehow, the nights were the hardest. Those were the hours when silence reminded him of absence, of all the moments he couldn't share, the small tragedies of life he couldn't prevent. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for the words he heard over that 3 a.m. call. He sat on the edge of his bed, phone clutched like a lifeline. His mind raced. Emily had left 3 years ago, claiming she needed a break, that they were incompatible, that she had to find herself. It had been a quiet divorce, amicable on paper, but brutal in reality. Jason had buried himself in work and in Lily, trying desperately to stay afloat. He thought the worst part of his life had been over. He was wrong. When he arrived at the hospital, the city streets were empty, mist curling in the streetlights, and the air smelled of rain and antiseptic. Every second felt suspended in a terrifying limbo. He ran into the emergency wing, showing the nurse his ID, shouting her name. "Emily Johnson. She's in surgery. Where is she?" But it wasn't until he was guided to a sterile, cold waiting room that the weight of the situation truly settled on him. The walls were white, the clock seemed impossibly slow, and the fluorescent lights made everything feel unreal. 3 hours earlier, Emily had collapsed at home, a sudden, catastrophic aneurysm. The hospital staff had performed emergency measures, but the doctors had turned to Jason, her ex-husband, the one person she could count on to make the impossible decision. He was her last hope, because she was the only family she had left nearby. He was the only one who knew her history, her allergies, her fears. And just like that, Jason realized that life, in all its cruel irony, had handed him a second chance, a chance he never thought he'd get. Sitting there, he replayed the years that had passed. He remembered Emily's laughter, the way she used to twirl Lily around in the kitchen, the soft moments of intimacy that were never shouted about in books or movies, but lived quietly in bedrooms and sunlit living rooms. He remembered the fights, too, the bitter words, the accusations, the endless misunderstandings. For years, he had carried guilt like a stone in his chest, believing he had failed not just as a husband, but as a partner. And now, as he stared at the sterile hospital walls, he realized that love, somehow, still lingered in the spaces they had left behind. Jason's mind was a storm. He thought about Lily, who was only 7, waiting for him at home, oblivious to the crisis unfolding. He thought about the last conversation he had with Emily before the divorce, how they had tried to promise each other peace, how they had promised they would still be family for Lily. But family had felt fragile, broken, until this moment. Now it felt like destiny, cruel and beautiful at the same time, was giving him an impossible responsibility. The surgeon finally emerged, eyes tired but kind. Jason felt the ground shift beneath him. The doctor's words were careful, measured. The surgery was complex. Emily had lost a lot of blood. He would need to make the decisions quickly. Jason's hands shook, and for the first time in years he felt the full weight of fear. Not for himself, but for the woman he had once loved, for the mother of his child, for the fragment of the life that had seemed forever lost. He stepped into the ICU, and there she was. Emily, frail and unconscious, tubes and monitors tethering her to life itself. Jason's throat tightened. He took her hand gently, almost afraid to disturb her. Memories surged forward, late-night walks, whispered conversations, laughter echoing down empty hallways. He thought about all the things left unsaid, the apologies that had never been voiced, the love that had never been fully recognized. And now none of that mattered as much as the simple, unspoken promise that he would do whatever it took to save her. Hours passed like minutes. Jason made decisions he didn't know he could make. He listened to the medical staff, signed the forms, gave consent where necessary, his heart hammering with every tick of the monitor. Outside, dawn broke, painting the city in fragile light, but inside, time had no meaning. Every second was a lifetime, every heartbeat a prayer. And through it all, he found an unexpected clarity. The resentment of the past, the heartbreak, the anger, they all dissolved into something else, purpose. The kind of purpose that comes when life hands you a chance to be brave, not just for yourself, but for someone who needs you more than ever. In that waiting room, Jason sat on a stiff chair, his mind wandering through a labyrinth of regret and hope. He thought about Lily and how her small face had lit up when she saw her mother just last week, blissfully unaware of the tragedy lurking in the shadows. He thought about what it meant to forgive, to truly forgive, not for Emily, not for himself, but for the love that had created a bond too strong to break, even in absence. He realized that being a parent had taught him resilience, but being human had taught him empathy, and now he was learning courage. After what felt like an eternity, the surgeon returned. This time, Jason could read the relief in his eyes. The surgery had been a success. Emily was stable. She would live. Jason felt something he hadn't felt in years, a tremor of overwhelming emotion, a combination of relief, gratitude, and a dawning sense of possibility. He wanted to laugh, cry, scream, and fall to his knees all at once. But mostly, he wanted to be there for her, to stay present, to embrace this fragile second chance. The next days were a blur of hospital visits, whispered conversations with nurses, and quiet moments by Emily's bedside. She slept much of the time, unconscious or drifting in and out of awareness, but every time her fingers twitched or her eyelids fluttered, Jason felt a spark of hope. He spoke to her even when she couldn't respond, telling her about Lily, about the mundane things he had done, the small triumphs and disasters of their lives. He apologized, he forgave, he promised. And even though she couldn't hear him fully, he felt as though his words were reaching her, tethering her back to life, back to love, back to the family they had once lost but could now reclaim. This ordeal changed Jason. He returned home not just as a single dad, but as a man who understood the fragile beauty of human connection, the weight of responsibility, and the redemptive power of love. He and Emily began slowly, tentatively, rebuilding trust and friendship, remembering what had once made them laugh, cry, and hope. He watched Lily's eyes sparkle as her parents started talking, planning small things together, and Jason realized that second chances are rare, but when they come, they are miraculous. Months later, Emily left the hospital for good, her recovery steady but slow. She leaned on Jason for support, and in turn, he leaned on her. There were awkward moments, reminders of the past, the tension of old wounds that had not fully healed, but they faced it together, not as exes, not as strangers, but as a family resurrected from its own ashes. Lily hugged them both, not knowing she was witnessing a miracle in motion, a testament to perseverance, forgiveness, and the stubborn, enduring power of love. Jason learned that night calls from the hospital, moments of terror, and the weight of impossible decisions can transform a life in ways nothing else can. He learned that courage is not absence of fear, but action despite it. He learned that even after heartbreak, after failure, after years of separation, there is always a chance to show up, to fight, to love, and to heal. And most of all, he learned that sometimes life hands you an opportunity to rewrite your story, not perfectly, not without pain, but with hope, presence, and unwavering care. If this story touched your heart, please engage with this video, like, comment, and share it with someone who might need to hear that second chances exist. Your support helps spread hope and reminds us all that kindness and love can overcome even the darkest nights. Before you go, take a moment to comment below about someone in your life you're grateful for. Sometimes, gratitude is the first step toward healing, for yourself and for those you love. Jason's journey wasn't easy, and it wasn't neat. But in the quiet moments, holding Emily's hand as she woke and watching Lily's bright, trusting eyes, he understood that life doesn't just hand out miracles. It gives them to those brave enough to answer the phone, to show up in the dark, and to choose love when fear threatens to take over. And for Jason, that 3 a.m. call became more than a moment of terror. It became the start of redemption, hope, and a life reborn from the unexpected courage of a single dad who refused to give up.